Hello. Hi. Thank you, Morgan. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to our in-person folks. Good evening to our YouTube folks. All of you who are watching this video in times to come, thank you for being here. This event is part of a series. The series that we've started is called Compassionate Communities, and we're running it in conjunction with Redeemer Explorers group. They hold various types of talks. We have held various types of talks. Our last one was with Maggie Helwig, and Maggie came to do a single-person presentation around encampments. This one is, as you can see, a panel presentation around addiction, recovery, and the connection between those things and the poor. And so the other arm of this with Redeemer Explorers is the Common Table, who runs a daily drop-in here from Monday to Friday for those living on the margins in Yorkville. So that is what this is. In terms of what we'll do this evening, we will have some time for our panelists in their expertise to respond to various parts of their own lives and work experience, the way that they interact on an ongoing basis with those facing addiction, those looking for recovery, those who are living in poverty. Then we will have a Q&A session after that, and the Q&A will include our YouTube folks. So when there is a YouTube question, we will be able to do that as well. Okay, so time to start. So my name is Tom Moore. I am the director of the Common Table, and my interest in this is to put together a series of talks that can help us move towards, this will shock you, becoming a compassionate community. So there are a lot of things that we deal with at the Common Table that are extremely practical, but in addition to those things, a lot of the issues that we have are around stigma. And that stigma can be for things like people living in encampments, people living on the streets. And I think there is this question in the past, or that they're not working through at all. Why is that? Why is there such a connection between poverty and addiction in some cases? And why is there addiction at all? Why do people choose to use whatever substances, alcohol and drugs? And so we're going to talk about that. And I really do welcome the conversation and the questions. And we have the right people to answer those questions. Not all of the issues have exact answers. So when we're talking about it, we're just talking about it. We're all looking for solutions together so that we can be people who are working together for the common good of others, and others in this case, many of whom are suffering. So let's jump in. Instead of introducing you all one by one, as I come to your portion of the questions, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves so people remember the context of who you are and what you do as we go through. So first, Dr. Jonathan Wong, tell us about yourself and the team that you work on.
Works? Yes? Okay. So I'm Jonathan Wong. I'm a family physician, and it's actually my joy and privilege to work on a team that specifically serves people who are living outside. So, yeah, anyone unsheltered, anyone living under a bridge in a tent encampment, by ravines, like literally anywhere. And so Nithyen is one of my colleagues. He's a nurse at the end. And I think part of the great thing is working with folks like Tom, folks like Jim, meeting people in drop-ins. And this is truly a special place, if I may just digress a little bit. Like we do see a lot of our quote-unquote target population from people living outside, essentially. And yeah, we are a healthcare team primarily. We're mobile, obviously. And yeah, I think we try to support people through different lenses, obviously a healthcare one, but also with the aim of supporting people in getting into housing, which is obviously stabilizing. It can be challenging, but I hope after today you will come away a little more hopeful because things are possible. And even overcoming addiction and getting into whatever recovery may look like is certainly feasible. And I do want to say, if I may say, doing sessions like this, I think is incredibly meaningful. And I can only hope to raise children, like I have 3 young boys. I hope they attend things like this as they grow up. So kudos to all of you here, physically present, and those of you who are online, because I think it is very meaningful and powerful when communities can come together and find ways to support people who are very much marginalized, impoverished, and really had no luck in their lives.
Great, thank you. From a doctor's perspective, what is addiction?
So I think I would want to frame it firstly, wherever you're coming from in terms of your own perception of what addiction is, and sort of, I'm sure, what you see on the street and any assumptions that you might have. Like I definitely had a lot of assumptions, and I still have to catch myself, I'm going to be honest, in terms of my own stereotypes and judgments. If there is one thing that you can come away with here today is, I think a lot of people will look at people who are struggling with substance use and, cast judgment and say, like, what is wrong with you? What kind of choices did you make? Were there moral failings in your life? And I think it's not addiction, to answer your question, is not a moral failing on the individual level. It is, at its heart, a chronic brain condition where things have been rewired, things have been jacked up a little bit, usually with various risk factors that resulted in a quote-unquote substance use disorder, which is what we diagnose as physicians. And usually that's, childhood trauma, growing up in foster care, disconnected with parents, all forms of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, and then it sort of leads to, it can lead to maladaptive coping mechanisms in the form of, starting off to use, and then in terms of the medicine behind it, or the sort of the pathophysiology of it, like many of you have heard of, the reward system, I'm sure. So, when people start using whatever substance of choice it might be, so alcohol, fentanyl, crystal meth, crack, it will release a rush of dopamine, so this nice little chemical that says, ooh, that felt real good, right? But when you use, so we get dopamine rushes ourselves, right? So if we are having a great conversation with friends, or you're playing, your favorite sport, or just having a great meal that is so delicious, you'll get a little dopamine spike. But when people use, it actually triggers 2 to 10 times the amount of dopamine that would normally be released in, things that you and I might take pleasure in. And so that's sort of there's this reinforcing effect, because when you get that 2 to 10 times of dopamine, when you come off of it, the world suddenly feels much flatter, much more boring. And so what ends up happening is, you have this stimulus that rewires your brain, and it just ends up craving more and more. And then this is what ends up ultimately leading to heavier and heavier use, more frequent use. And you can think of it as a thermostat that's no longer functioning, right? We know a thermostat achieves balance based on where you set the set point at. If it goes too hot, it's going to turn off if you got it set on heater. it'll turn off and it'll come back down, right? But with addiction, you sort of lose that capacity, and then you just need more, like you cannot turn it back down. You need to keep going up, like it just keeps going up and up and up with more use in terms of the temperature. So the other part of it is you'll get these intense cravings to use because, as I mentioned, the dopamine gives you the, oh wow, this is nice, right? But we have this thing called the prefrontal cortex, and it controls impulse, like our impulse control and our judgment, and we lose that the more we use. So that's in a sense, or it is rather, like very much the brakes, right? If you know that you're gonna do something, or if something like crosses your mind where it's like, ooh, I really would like to do that, but it may not be the best idea because it might actually be a crime, right? Like your prefrontal cortex would be like, oh wait, maybe we just need to stop and hold that, that line of thinking and put a brake on it. But what addiction does, again, chronic brain condition, it rewires your brain. You lose a lot of that prefrontal cortex ability to stop and put the brakes on using. So you end up using more and more and more. And then over time it becomes, I know I'm speaking too long, but over time it becomes like very much a physical and psychological dependence, right? And it becomes more of like, sometimes there's like rituals involved in using. Even if I'm prescribing something that essentially hits the same receptors and would technically meet their biochemical need for the substance, there is a psychological ritual in using, and maybe like burning a substance in a pipe, right? Which I'm sure you've seen on the street sometimes. Yeah, so and then the other part is the physical part. If I may share like a very quick story. I mean, when we started doing street medicine in Toronto, it was at the height of the pandemic, and medical practitioners just started doing safe opioid supply, basically trying to replace street fentanyl use with prescribed opiates, which we know are clean and sort of not tainted with all the other adulterants that street drugs are, and hopefully to engage in care and retain in care, which I feel anecdotally it has, and I think there's some evidence behind it as well. But regardless, getting back to the physical dependence in the addiction process, like I had personally, so I've never worked in a safe injection site before, but it very much felt like I was in one particular circumstance. So like on the fentanyl, on the opioid crisis and fentanyl specifically, when people are so addicted to it, and their body needs it, and like they know in their brain there is one thing that's going to take away all their physical symptoms. And so there's this guy in front of me. He had literally all of the physical symptoms at its peak. We do this thing called COW scoring, which is like a clinical opiate withdrawal scoring scale. And he would have been at the top of it. So essentially, you can think of opioid withdrawal as like you have every bodily fluid coming out of every orifice possible. So he is tearing, like he's crying in front of me. He had just vomited. I see his vomit. He had pooped, like diarrhea himself, and it was very, like, I mean, it's not pleasant, and like there's body aches, there's joint pain, like bone squeezing, crunching pain that people experience, and so I mean he's not comfortable, and he's shaky, and he needs something, but he cannot physically get anything. So this was one of my actual first experiences prescribing safe opioid supply. So I prescribed it. I walked over to the pharmacy. I pick up some of the basically hydromorphone, and then he can barely do anything for himself. So I have never I've never been really involved in the drug scene personally, and like I don't like, even though I'm in this world, I am really like, there's still like a degree of like, I'm still very much a child, right, in sort of seeing some of these things, and so he helped me, or he instructed me on how to cook it and sort of load it in the syringe, and then I'm helping him find a vein, and I'm helping him push it, and then there's just this immediate relief in his physical symptoms. Like you read about these things in books. I mean, I don't work in the hospital, but I do all outpatient, I do all street medicine. So like we don't see, like I guess we don't see this commonly, but it was very, I mean, it's just, all the textbook learning is like, they'll teach it to you, but then to see it is truly, I don't know, is gut-wrenching to see in terms of when he's in that state, but then to see the relief immediately after. And I think that's a big part of why people continue to use, right? Like, if you know something's gonna take away the pain or the withdrawal symptoms, you're gonna go and get it. And it's the same way, like I'm a softie, okay? So if I have a headache, I'm like, where's the Advil? But can you, like, I can't imagine. I would definitely, if I dabbled with substances in my past, I would be in the same boat for sure.
Yeah, and as you say, it's not just the physical relief and the things that are happening physiologically, but then, the fact that even when you go through the withdrawal, the unresolved trauma, like there's a lot of pieces that are still left to speak to in a way that can't be spoken to as quickly as using again. Yeah. When people are in addiction for years, decades, and often they're on the street, what is the effect of being on substances over such a long course of time, living on the streets over such a long period of time?
So I think like the streets themselves are a huge risk factor for what we call morbidity and mortality, right? Like just effects on your overall health and straight up dying. And so individuals who live on the street are studies show consistently 4 to 7 times more likely to straight up die than a similarly sheltered cohort. The substance using over decades and decades, it can be very difficult to unwind because there is all the sort of, there's the complexity of the past trauma. I would say like a lot of it is rooted in trauma, and it can be hard to engage. Like, people can say, oh, you just need a little bit of counseling. Well, it's very hard also when you're living on the street too, right? It can be even, there's a lot of complications with substance use too, right? Like if you're injecting drugs, for instance, like you're definitely, I mean, even if you're smoking, but you're at risk for infectious disease, Hep C, HIV, and then if you're injecting in particular, I was going to get at, you can get a lot of skin and soft tissue infections. So people need to be on antibiotics often. Like that's one of the main classes of medications that we're just going around slinging on the streets, right? But it's hard to, when you're living on the street, it's hard to take care of yourself. Like even something as simple, we do our best to simplify medication regimens because like even for me, I think if I was to take a medication twice a day, it would be very difficult for me, I think, to remember. So we try to simplify. Even once a day, it can be very challenging. And then medications get lost. You mentioned your question is sort of rooted in like living on the street too. Things are stolen all the time. There's violence, like they're all over the place. And if you're using fentanyl, or even things like crystal meth, like you just lose track of time, like very easily. And it's hard to take care of oneself. Yeah.
Whenever we talk about the determinants of health around homelessness and all the other health factors. The thing that I always tell people is housing is so critical, and the reason for that being the case, numerous. One of them that we rarely think of is the ability to keep, store, and take medication. That's one of the UHN partnerships around housing, was just the ability for people to just have their medicine on hand. And I know we had someone here who was really had a very difficult, challenging life with trauma and with their mental health. And that's one of the questions we'll get. Well, is that schizophrenia? Is that drug use? And sometimes the overlap, it actually becomes very hard to tell. But we were able to offer a schizophrenia medication that was really remarkable and life-changing. But the schedule that you have to take it on was quite specific. It was like day 1, day 8, day 38. And if you miss one of those, then you reset the clock. And that's what happened in our case. We had 3 really successful periods of offering the drug, and then we just couldn't find them in the right time period. And so these are the sort of things that make it very difficult for people, even who are seeking help simultaneously for addiction and mental health and housing. And you miss one piece, and it's very easy to go back to step 1. Yeah. Thank you, Johnny. That's very helpful. Jim Willis. Jim is on the Common Table team here with us. He came on board less than a year ago, but was a fan favorite of both the staff and the community before I got here. And so he came extremely highly recommended when I joined the Common Table, and certainly I can vouch for his work. But why don't you tell us what you do here?
Okay, so I'm Jim Willis. I guess my title is Outreach and Community Support Worker. I am the caseworker here at Common Table, and what do I do? I never know how to answer this because I don't know how to answer this. I don't know what I do. I just listen to people, and I just talk to people, and I try to learn their story. I help with many aspects of their life. I help people pay bills. I help people get ID. I don't know. I'm just there for people. I'm more of a listener than a talker.
Can I jump in? Because
Sorry.
I definitely know what you do. Jim is a great listener, and a lot of his magic is in just the day-to-day of catching things. But I think it's very easy to get fatigued with how high the need is in our community. And Jim doesn't experience that fatigue so far. We haven't seen it. So it's not just responding to the daily requests. It's saying, I'm going to rent a car and drive this person out to the airport to make sure that their immigration status, doesn't falter. My job is done, but today we carried someone up the stairs so they were in a place where they were less likely to have an overdose issue, in private. I think the ability to go above and beyond is a big part of it, but I also think the ability to connect with people in a way that a lot of the rest of us don't have access to because of the lack of lived experience is a big factor. We had somebody come in and say, I need $10. And it's hard to do cash in this community for some of the reasons around addiction. And I realized that this person, and this happens a lot, told Jim the real reason they needed $10 because they knew he would understand, and then refused to tell me the real reason, and gave me the story, because I think people's perception of Jim is he gets it, And so do you want to tell us anything about your experience when we talk about addiction?
So, yeah, I think people trust me because I lived in that world for a long time. Active drug user, crystal meth addict for almost 25 years. Drug addict for sure for 25 years at least. So I know what it's like I can tell you the reason I use drugs, and crystal meth is Johnny spoke about it. It's trauma. There's some trauma, right? And for me, it was always about not feeling good enough and just really not liking who I was inside, and I don't really know where that comes from. And so I didn't think you liked me either. And so the only way I knew how to shut, and my mind would race. My mind, it races with thoughts. It's always thinking about something, like analyzing everything, kind of like judging you, judging me kind of thing. And I just need to shut that off. Just shut the noise off for a little bit, right? And the only way I could do that, the only way that I found that worked was with stimulants. And then you talked about the dopamine release, Johnny, and I'm not medically trained, but like my understanding of crystal meth is like it's the highest. Like it releases the highest amount of dopamine, like 1,000 times stronger than sex, things like this. And that's what I was chasing, right? And I was an intravenous user, so I mean, once that drug hit my blood, it was just this wash of just, oh my God, I don't have to think for a few minutes, right? And then a few minutes. But for me, like, it's such a high-powered stimulant. Like, I would just stay awake for days and days and days, just because at some point I figured out in my head that if I didn't have to wake up, I didn't have to, like, if I didn't go to sleep, I didn't have to wake up to this crap, this life, right? I just didn't want to wake up to it, so I just stayed awake. And I would fight that. And the longer I stayed awake, you can imagine the stranger I got. Right. Definitely. Definitely. But it's just that feeling of just, I'm not good enough, people don't like me, I don't belong, and I think I see that in people, or I imagine it in people. When I was viewing the world, being high, like I was scared. I was scared of you. Very scared. And everybody was looking at me. Even if you weren't, I knew you were. And I had to hide. Like I didn't like being outside. And I just don't want other people to feel that way. Right? That's all. Like I've got a lot of guys that come in that are on the same drug as me, and I like it because like it's a remember when, it's a reminder, like because like that drug it scrambled my brain. It just scrambled my brain. Like I couldn't put thoughts together. I couldn't string words together. And it's just an awful feeling. As much as I didn't like myself, I didn't like that feeling even more. And I just like to say, like the party ended a long time ago for me. I don't know if is that good enough?
Yeah, and you've talked to me about that before, and I think that's interesting is, you know, I don't hear people using the language of, I used to be an addict. People will say, no, I am an addict. I have addiction. And I think that reminder of what I'm choosing and what I'm not choosing is like a really consistent daily choice that we have to make.
For me, I have to remember that I'm an addict, like, because my mind lies to me. It plays tricks on me, right? If I fall into uncomfortable emotions, there's still a little bit. I don't want to feel that, right? I don't want to feel sad. I hate feeling angry. I don't like these feelings. They're uncomfortable. So the addiction's very sneaky, where it might pop in the back of my head and be like, you know how we could take this away, right? Sometimes the color orange from that needle cap, that's enough to trigger me sometimes. But in my case, I've had enough bad experiences and enough relapses over the years, and I've lost everything enough times that like I've kind of had the experience now that it's just not worth it. I have that little bit of foresight now that be like, well, you remember last time you relapsed? Last time I relapsed, I was homeless within 12 hours. Right? I just gave up.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I know in people's journey towards sobriety, when you've been an addict for a certain amount of time and then you're pursuing recovery, I don't think I know anyone who cracked it on the first try and then lived in lifelong sobriety. I think that experience of relapse and relapse and relapse is definitely part of it. Yeah.
And the desire to want to stop, right? Like, for me, there really had to be a desire to want to stop. And what I'm learning is that, like, that's just not everybody.
Yeah, and that's the question of, like, how deep is the desire to use and how deep is the desire to stop? And what are the things that inform those conversations that I'm having with myself?
I remember I used to be the guy. I would sit in trap houses. A trap house is where you go and you do drugs and that's it, right? You buy drugs, sell drugs, do drugs. I would be the guy sitting there and I'd be like, don't you guys think there's anything better than this? People don't like that. They do not want to hear that. But I remember one person one time said to me, and I thought it was pretty bad. The way I was feeling and the way I was it was all messed up and I just didn't feel good. This person was like, there's things worse than this. And I was like, oh. Right. Oh. And then I only left to imagination what that person could have been through. Right. I don't know that kind of trauma, so, yeah.
Yeah, but the through line of trauma being a very central and intrinsic part of most people who are facing addiction is absolutely the case. Yeah, some of the brain wiring things before and after using, that's a big part of it. Why do you think people in this community tell you things that they won't tell me? Like, what is the trustworthiness that people are tapping into?
Well, I don't always play by the rules. I kind of I bend the rules a little bit. I can, I kind of know where they're coming from. I know what they want. I don't know if I know what they need, but it's just little things. Like someone on the street, number one currency, cigarettes, right? If I have smokes, if I can give a guy a cigarette, that's trust right there, right? If I can give them a smoke every day, they're coming to me, and then I just talk to them like I'm talking to anybody I know from the street, right? We shoot the shit. I talk trash.
Well, and that's the thing is Jim is very kind, but also the ability to just talk straight to a person. It's like Johnny said, you can look at somebody, and I know Jim's in school now, and I have some experience in this world as somebody who works in it, but I think certainly somebody would look at me and go, hey man, I know you're pretending that you get it, you don't get it. And they look at Jim and they go, there's no point in lying to you because I know you do get it. That is a part of it.
I was talking to a couple guys in the stairwell the other day, and I went outside and I caught them smoking meth on the stairwell, and I was just like, guys, what are you doing? You got to go upstairs, please. And it's a couple guys that we know that have been doing better over the last couple months, and even then they felt a little bit of shame when I caught them. Mm-hmm. Just like the one guy's like, I swear it's the first time in a week I did. You don't know me an explanation. I'm not judging you. My idea is if you're gonna do it, just do it upstairs because we got to respect the people who aren't using because they didn't choose it, right? So. Yeah,
the common table I think implicitly comes with no judgment because we do understand how people end up in spirals of addiction, and then the combination of that and community safety, people really can understand where we're coming from. I'm going to tell a story and then I'm going to ask you a question. We had a fella in our program, and the song Piano Man? I'm sure that I could be a movie star if I could get out of this place. This is what he said to us. He came and he said, sometime in a week or a month or a year, I'm going to come and I'm going to ask for a rehab bed. I'm going to ask for a space to go into sobriety when I'm ready, and I am almost ready. And that's one big thing around addiction. There's nothing that we can do to push anyone into that path. It always only ever happens on their own time frame. And I think the thing that really stood out to me was, he said, I'm in my 60s, I've been in addiction for 40 years, and I know that if I was sober, I could direct a movie. And I know if I was sober that I could help other people in all these ways. And he had the list, and his sobriety was connected to, his desire for sobriety was connected to all of the things that would allow him to help other people that he didn't have access to for all of these decades of his life. So, you work with a lot of the people here. What is the sign to you that somebody is actually ready to pursue this thing?
Ready to pursue sobriety, recovery?
Yes.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, at least for me, they're going to really want it. They have to want it. So if someone's ready, we've had a couple guys, they'll come to me. Last week, someone come to me. He's been wanting to talk to me for a few days and whatever. Eventually, one day passed, 2 days passed. The third day came and we sat down in the office and he's like, listen, I'm living in this situation. This person's doing this. I'm starting to do this. He's like, what are my options? What can I do, right? They got to be ready, right? the pain of using has to be worse than the pain of not
using. Yeah. Is there anything that keys you in to tell you that people are not ready?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like how many times I was ready to quit and then
Right.
and then relapse afterwards. People are ready. I can make judgments and assumptions, but I mean, I think there's a real sense of just tiredness.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm defeated. Like is there something else? And at that point, we just ask for help. But I think finally, I dropped the ego. Like at the end of mine, I dropped the ego and was just like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I thought I had this the whole time. I thought I could do this. I thought, I'm good. I got this. And then finally, I was just like, you know what? I just don't know.
Yeah, totally. And your work spans over quite a few things. So Jim does case management with us. Jim also does a lot of outreach day by day. People have needs that they bring to him. What is it about addiction and homelessness that make it hard to pursue other goals like housing, like employment? Like what blocks people from pursuing those other things that we think that sometimes they should?
Well, nothing gets more in the way of a good time than rent and work. It's a vicious cycle. So when I look back at my years of drug use, like, I was kind of a binge user, right? Maybe it would start off on the weekends, and then it would get worse. Like, I remember, like, it's just very hard for me to hold a job. I would get high on Friday, and then I'd be up Saturday night, probably Sunday night, and I'd call in sick Monday. And then maybe next weekend, I'm calling in Tuesday. And then eventually I'm just not calling in and said, okay, I'm done. I don't need this. Like, the drug becomes the most important thing in my life. Like, it becomes more important than... I remember I hadn't eaten for days one time, and I had $10. I could have bought some food, but I was like, well, if I buy a point of meth, like 0.1 gram of meth, $10 worth, I could use that and not be hungry for the next day and a half, right? It just, and then it becomes like just this shame and this guilt, right? Like, once I'm so deep into addiction, nothing else matters. And I think one of the best things I ever come to realize and come to admit to myself was that I was a bad father, right? I finally, like, in all the denial, I'd be like, no, but, and I would justify, well, I was always there, and I did this, and I was good. But, no, I said that wrong. When I admit to myself that drugs were more important than my kids, when I admitted that to myself, I think that's when things started to change, too. Because, like, nobody wants to think that drugs are more important, but at the end of the day, changing what I felt in here was more important than seeing a smile on my kid's face.
Yeah, I can understand. And Jim is a great father now. And I think the thing that become very overwhelming is that cycle of shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear in a lot of people's stories, the way people get into trouble and the way people who are pursuing sobriety get back into trouble is very often around one decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes we think it's like spending on using, but we were just talking about in the hall, it's not always rent or drugs. Sometimes it's rent or an employment program, and you make one decision that you think is a good one, and then you end up homeless. And homelessness and pursuing sobriety while on the streets, very rare, very, very rare. And so when you're losing access to housing at the same time that you're trying to, stay on the straight and narrow, those things don't go together. And so it really is very easy to miss one payment or to misfile one form, to miss your taxes, to have one thing that's not related to drugs or alcohol at all, really derail a very long path of good and things that were going very well. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Hintzen.
Hello.
You look so excited.
I'm so nervous.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so I'm Amanda, alcoholic. I'm also a addictions counselor, and I am a volunteer with Common Table here.
Yeah, Amanda has a very busy schedule, and she, as some of you know, makes time to come in and cut
Kitchen
carrots
lead.
and make soups and
I'm the kitchen lead.
yeah,
I've moved up.
very handy in the kitchen. What does addictions counseling look like in your work setting?
Well, we are a lived experience. All the counselors that I work with, including my boss, have lived experience. So I was thinking about this before I came here. It's obviously we work with clients one-on-one. So it's a live-in treatment center for women that I work at, and we work with them one-on-one. And it's partially government funded, so you can pay to go there. So there's some people that are there through their insurance. There's some people that have paid out of pocket, and there are some people that are funded through the Ministry of Health. So it varies quite a bit, but we do assessments with clients. We have psychoeducational groups, and then we send them out to 12-step meetings as well. But I think that one of the big things in our group, because of the lived experience, is that feeling of hope. Like I went there 8 years ago as a client, and seeing the counselors, some of them I work with today that were the counselors when I was there as a client, so it's kind of cool. But seeing them like living a life, kind of like Jim was saying too, like helping out people when they see you like living and not addicted to the drugs anymore and not needing to like wake up and drink anymore. And they see that it's possible, right? You give them that glimmer of hope.
Just to help our YouTube people.
That glimmer of hope that it's possible to recover, to be in recovery.
Right. Yeah, no, that's excellent work. I'm going to ask you a controversial question, okay?
Okay.
Who becomes addicted? When you think about who comes into your facility, who falls prey to the challenges of addiction?
Everybody. Like I said, I went there as a client. I paid to go to where I am, and I relapsed a week later. I used to live down the street on Bel Air, and from the time I relapsed to the time I went back into treatment, I was living like in a beautiful condo, drinking myself to death every day. I was still suffering. Just because I wasn't on the streets, I was still going through all the challenges. And then I have other friends of mine that went to the same treatment center through the Ministry of Health, and they're still sober today. I went back to treatment to a private place where I paid a lot more money, and I did get sober, but I have other friends that paid the same amount of money that are still back out there, right? And some of them are homeless today, even though they paid $40,000 to go, then they've lost everything back to zero. So there is no recipe to who's suffering, who's not. Everyone's in a different position, I think. Just life.
That's our experience for sure at the Common Table. I know when I think of people who are volunteers for us, when I think about people who are on committees and boards for us, there are people who, were clients, community members at the Common Table for a long time, and then found their way out of the other side of it. And you would meet them, and we're talking about our prejudices and our perceptions. You don't seem like someone who was an alcoholic. You don't seem like somebody who was addicted and living on the streets for 20 years. And I think the most startling reality for people when we have volunteer groups come through, and Rosedale Day School, this private school, these families with a lot of money are showing up, and they go, I'm the sort of person that is going to help. And I say, you also could be the sort of person who could be here using our services. It's very easy, the line is very thin between those who think that they're so far away from these problems, and none of us are. And the reality that I use to really access compassion, obviously I hope a lot of it is about the other, but even when I think about myself, I'm not that far away from that place. And I hope that if I face those challenges, there will be someone there to help. There will be someone there to catch me, that there will be government-funded services that will allow me to seek, better things for myself. So anyone can fall into addiction. Mm-hmm. When someone finally says, I've reached the end of my rope, I'm ready to get help, are there any common factors in people's readiness that, you think this person is actually going to be able to see the program through and do the work?
I think Jim kind of touched on it too, just like that tired, right? There's a term in the rooms that we say, like sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like you're just done. Like even the first time I went to treatment, I kind of went for others, right? Like I went because like my ex wanted me to go, my mom wanted me to go, my sisters. And then the second time I went, my ex had, you know, kindly suggested I go back to rehab. But if a week before that, I was actually Googling different treatment centers because I was like, it's time. But I didn't tell him that. But I was ready to go back. But I think I see a lot of second timers, people that have been through before, they've gone back out, it doesn't get any better. There's no like miracle cure that you can start drinking like a normal person again. Like you just go back out, you go deeper and deeper, darker and darker, lose more, and then they come back, and then you're crawling back the second time. But there's no real, like I couldn't even tell you what the difference was. I couldn't do it anymore. It's exhausting. That life it's exhausting. It's so tiring, even though you're not really doing anything. Like I literally sat at home and drank myself to death and watched Netflix all day, but my brain just didn't stop going. And you said my favorite word, the noise. Like when that noise was finally like, it was like a gift. That gift of it just stopping. It was beautiful. So I started rambling. I forget the question.
Yeah, no, so I think that that's fair. You know, like anyone could fall into addiction, and then the things that cause us to seek help, I think, are also very unique. Is there something that tells you, I think this is the moment that they have reached a more permanent sobriety? Is there something, if one of your clients said, what is the number one tip to stay clean? What is going to for sure cause me the most likely scenario to succeed? Is there something there?
Well, environment, right? Because when we go out of treatment, if we're still doing the same thing that we were doing before we went in there, it's going to be very difficult to change your life, right? It's going to be very difficult to change. Especially because we do get some unhoused people that come in, and then if we send them back out to no housing, and unhoused can mean anything. It can mean that they were living on the streets before they came in, or they just didn't have permanent housing. They were couch surfing, they were staying with somebody. But if that person they're staying with is drinking or using, and then they go back to that same situation, their chances of staying sober are very slim. But we have such limited options, especially in the way of sober living. There's one next door to us that's government funded, but you have to be under 35. If you're over 35 as a woman, there's like very, very limited options to send you back out to. So it's very hard, but when they start asking, like especially the ones that walk in right away, they're like on the waiting list, they're trying, like you can see that they're already they know that they need to make that change because they can't go back to living the way they were because they won't stay sober. But it's just like certain things too, like I can't praise the 12-step community enough because it makes that connection with other like-minded people, and these people are willing to help you and guide you through to sobriety as well. Common Table helped me. It was volunteering. This was the first responsible thing I did in like 7 years. I had to like wake up once a week. My ex would be like, "Are you going to work today?" I'm like, he was so proud of me because I'd get up, I'd do my 4 hours here. And it was like, starting responsibilities. So them looking for jobs, when they're looking for other sources when they get out, it's like they know what they need to do. They know they need to make some changes because sobriety doesn't come to you. Like Jim knows too, you got to work for it. Like being here, right? Coming in here, volunteering, like starting to work. Like we need to start building our lives back. Giving time to service. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a very common thing I hear. Environment is very big. Certainly community of sobriety is very important. And then thinking about an area to give back. Many people frame their sobriety in how that will allow them to do something different for others. I have someone in my family who's been very deep into addiction for more than 10 years, probably closer to 15, inpatient probably 5 or 6 times. And they've been very fortunate, a very large family that cares about them, that would do anything for them, that helpfully or unhelpfully has come and bailed them out a number of times, spent more than $100,000 on inpatient options. always have multiple family members that will provide a place for them to live. And then every time they get out, never allowed to enter downtown Toronto, throw away your phone and wipe all of your contacts from the cloud, like the routine of exiting one type of environment, but then also needing to get into a different environment. He very quickly was like, I'm not religious, but I need to find a church. Like, I just need to find people to be around that are doing different sort of things. You know, that is a huge benefit and luxury that he has, and still very challenging to find sobriety. And then you can imagine someone with no family, no access to housing, nowhere to stay, no one to pick you up from the hospital, no one to, you know, bring you to a meeting. And then how easy are the chances for your sobriety to stick compared to someone else with so many more advantages? I can really imagine how difficult it would be for some of our community members downstairs to say, I think today is the day, and to have all the things in place at the same time that would allow them to succeed. In my family's life, sometimes it's actually been, as I alluded to, the family that's been the most unwittingly harmful to somebody's sobriety by not allowing them, you know, we talk about hitting rock bottom. As you think about working with people and their family and friends, what is something that we might do for somebody who's pursuing sobriety that would help? And what is something we might do for someone like that that could actually hurt?
Well, the enabling, like you just said, like giving an addict money over and over again isn't going to help them. Taking an addict to a meeting could be helpful. Like my mom actually flew out to Calgary and took me to my first AA meeting. Like I did stay sober for a few months, but just it opened up the door for me. But she wouldn't just give me money and pay my rent for me month after month if I asked her to. I don't know, it's very difficult. The loved ones of alcoholics and addicts can be just as sick as the addicts themselves. There's 12-step programs for them as well, because they can end up in the same, it's almost an addiction, and you're trying to save them, but you can't save them. That's the reality. The addict can save themselves. That's like self-determination that is needed for recovery. Is definitely something like you can be there for them and be that supportive person, but if it's starting to hurt you, then you're just as sick, right? Like it becomes just as draining for you. So it's okay to say, like, putting your own boundaries in place as well. Like, I love you, but I can't go down the ship with you anymore. Like, it's starting to affect me. But knowing that your door is open, like knowing that you're there for them when they're ready.
I think that's very important. I think finding what those boundaries are for people can be really critical. So in my family, it was cash. I'm not going to be giving you any more money. And you can never live with me again. You know, so after the 45th try, this isn't going to work. And so, you know, whatever solution exists outside of this, you know, because it destroys the whole family, and because that enabling ended up doing more harm than good. And those boundaries can be very hard to enforce, and why these processes can take a decade sometimes, and longer than that. Yeah. Thank you. Nithyen, I realize that I've only ever seen your last name written down. Can you pronounce it for me?
Oh, it's Manohar.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's so nice to see the community here. I'm a registered nurse. I work with Johnny, Dr. Wong, and I guess when I try to describe what we do for a living is we're just three guys that go on the streets and chat with unsheltered people and see, hey, what do you need and what can I do to make your day a little bit better?
Can you tell us the name of your organization and team?
Yes, so we work with the Scout team, and we work with the Inner City Health Associates. That's our team name. And our organization, right now we're just kind of representing ourselves, and I'm kind of representing some of the street nurses in particular.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, so the three of them cover all of downtown Toronto. So, you know, we see them as often as they can peel themselves away from the dozens and dozens of other places that need just as much health and help. So we're just certainly grateful for every time you show up.
And so like I'm just so happy that people are here. I just wanted to kind of share that when I reflect on my own life, there's a lot of things I did not know about addictions, even when I had a license and a degree, and that it took me a long time to really understand where people are coming from as much as I can. For me and Johnny, we're so lucky. People are so nice to us. They're so kind to us. They say we've done such great work, and we're part of a professional class. We get paid to do this work that we like to do, and so we feel blessed. But we really depend on people that on the common table, volunteers, community members, sometimes really just random people who've met someone who's street homeless and they just like have a huge heart, maybe a little bit of too much time, and they want to help them. And so those are the people that, when I think about who does great work to help the world a little bit better, is just the community people that are living in the city, and they just help folks out. Yeah.
What makes it easier for you? What attitude or method of approach makes people in our community want to talk to you and ask you for help?
So I guess for us, like people that work in healthcare, we kind of have our own culture and how we speak to people. And I think that's really useful sometimes. Like you'll speak to someone who provides cancer care, your family doctor, in a very specific way, and it's very kind and caring. I think for street homeless folks, unfortunately, they've had really poor experiences in hospital systems, in the medical system, and I feel like I provided really poor care, and I was very rude and not nice to people when I was in my early 20s while working. And so we have to kind of shift our language to meet someone's need, especially for street homeless, how someone would speak with them. And it's not how you speak. For me, I always call it you're using your authentic self. So like, when you have a job, you're talking to people in a certain way, you're code switching, you're using certain language. I think with street homeless folks, you just have to really be yourself, which is sometimes really hard to do because when we're always gauging situations. So for myself in particular, like, this is how I dress how I want to dress. They know that. I tell them. And they're actually very nice about it. They'd say like, hey, I like what you're wearing, that's cool. And it's like, they feel the same way. My other colleague, he likes to dress in whatever clothes, dress down, and they like that because he's being himself. We can talk about our client care experiences, but we ask people like, what do they want to talk about? And those are really important. I think people just want to be seen as human, as sometimes you're boys or girls, and that's like a really key part for us as a therapeutic relationship, but just being human. People being people goes a long way. When you're street homeless, you don't get those experiences from folks that are not street homeless sometimes. Like if you go to a bank, people look at you funny. If you go to get some food in the food court, sometimes you have a security guard that's really nice, but 95 times out of 100, security guards are not being really nice to you. So just chatting with folks is a real part of our job, and it's a little sad to say.
Yeah. One of the first lessons I learned at the common table was with Nithyen, and there was somebody who needed pretty urgent medical attention. Hard to have a straightforward conversation with. And I really felt the desire to protect Nithyen, and I think the community member was, asking some racialized questions, and then, he said, I don't want to just talk to anyone about my medical background, which is totally reasonable. Any of us might feel that way. But I thought, oh, they're so busy. And so he said, well, before I'll show you, what I have going on here, I want to ask you some questions about where are you from and where you're born. And there was all sorts of things that he wanted before he could trust Nithyen with his medical case. And I didn't respect that at all. I thought, Nithyen's so busy, wrap it up and ask him your question, or you're going to miss your opportunity to have health care. And Nithyen's, no, I got this. And they spent an hour together talking before it got to anything medical. And the next time I saw him, and he was in trouble, he said, could you specifically text Nithyen for me? He put in the work that made Nithyen the sort of person that he wanted to talk to again in a way that I just didn't have any respect for because of the urgency of the medical care overwhelmed, I think, the humanness of the situation. When somebody living on the streets wants to pursue medical care, maybe they go to the ER, what is the sort of different treatment and perspective that somebody going into the hospital is going to receive compared to if I went?
I think for in the community, for the work that we do, or if they come to the common table, we sometimes think about, like, I don't want to speak poorly about medical professionals in general, but I'm going to a little bit, is that sometimes we have our commitment to giving great care. And great care has a very specific meaning for like your first line, second line, third line treatments. And I think and we call it adherence, as someone adhering to the treatment. When you're street homeless, there's so many things that are interfering with your ability to adhere to treatment. So when we provide treatment in, let's say, the common table, things are going to be they're just going to look a lot different. I mean, we kind of joked about it already, but I always forget my medications myself. Like, does that make me a bad patient? Yes, I am a terrible patient. I will forget medications that I'm supposed to take twice a day, and we all do this. Like, that's all part of life. In street medicine, sometimes it's just where the medication is. If there is addictions, just remembering when to take them. Getting them, unfortunately, they can misplace them. There's too many variables that can happen. I think also high-level care requires a lot of interventions like x-rays, blood work, whatever they could be, going to specialists. And if you're just someone who's living housed, it's already kind of difficult to take time off work to go, if let's say you got a fracture, you got to take a cab to the next clinic. Those are things that are really difficult. And I think even just, we can all kind of experience like, oh, I should have gone to the doctor last week, but I didn't. When you're street homeless, you have the same problems. You're kind of delaying your care, and how you prioritize things are much different. For going to get your check, you really need your check, you're going to get your check. It's not all the time just like, oh, I want to go chase some highs, I want to go use drugs. It's just living day to day is so much difficult. We kind of put our priorities on someone and that they're not able to meet it, and then all of a sudden we get disappointed. And I just don't think street medical doctors like Dr. Wong, they will do that. They understand, hey, this person's going to prioritize according to their life. I don't know what their life is. I'm going to create a plan so that they can meet it as best they can.
I mean, that's a core of what we do across the whole common table is client-centered goal setting. What we realized was when we set people's goals for them according to what we think is wise, they never do those things. When we open with the question, what are your goals? What would you like to pursue in this point of your life? I mean, that's where we find the real magic. And you can imagine somebody who's a bad patient, if I go into the hospital and I say, oh, I didn't take my medication, or I don't want to do this, and I can explain why I feel that way, I have a very kind response often, or a more empathetic response. This same individual, although it's not his job, Nithyen went to visit him in the hospital and found out that like the care and treatment that they needed might have involved cutting his pants away from things that were sticking, and that was his only pair of pants, and he just wasn't willing to do that. And what he needed desperately was to have wounds cleaned, and at the first sign of resistance, there wasn't any sense of like, why is he concerned about his pants? It was just out, and he had been kicked out of the hospital half a dozen times, and then so we had to just stop sending him. We just realized a hospital was just never going to help this person. And then we fall back on ICHA and the scout team. As a final overall question, why is there such an overlap between our street-involved population and our addictions population?
I thought about this for a while. I don't have a single answer for it. I think one part for street homeless and addictions is when we speak to people, they have incredibly traumatic stories, right? I think one part, I kind of wanted to bring why I like the common table is that, because this is just something I've been thinking about recently, is that some of our patients, they talk about the traumas that they've had, but they also talk about the community they didn't have. And, you know, I'm just thinking about one particular person that unfortunately passed away. For him, he had a really great life that was not, you know, with multiple traumas in early childhood, but he was gay and he wasn't accepted by his community. And when he wasn't accepted by 17, 18, it created a pathway of going to connect with drugs, connecting with the wrong people, and eventually being street homeless and being trapped in the cycle of poverty. So for me, I see that street homelessness has, and addictions, it comes not just from the traumas that affect many people, because we all know people who have an incredibly traumatized life, who have some kind of resilience wherever that may come. So I like to think about how community members and families really keep people as a preventative measure from becoming street homeless. Not to change the question a little bit, just because like sometimes when you talk about trauma, where I always feel like there's a little bit of a like, oh, they're this way because this thing happened to them. But I like to say like, hey, maybe we failed people together, unfortunately. Much as the same way, to give a little bit of hope, together we really help people. Because as we talk, like Jim helps people, Tom helps folks, Amanda, I'm sure you help many people just by being there for them. And I'm just like always amazed when I go downstairs or I go to other drop-ins. There's some folks just like pull up a guitar, they play some music, they play or they sing together, and they have just like a great old time. And I was like, oh, I feel like things are going to change in people's lives just by coming together.
That's a big part of it. You know, there are people here who, when you're ready, you know who to tell that to. You know that we have. Now, this is a secret. We have secret cab fare to get you over to the rehab spaces, to get you into the hospitals. We have a team that we can call. It's really critical. You know, people are always surprised. We are the mailing address for dozens of people. We receive their mail here. We're on their ID. We give people little membership cards, and that membership card says on one hand, I am a member of the common table. And that sense of belonging of we want you to be here, of all the spaces that say we don't want you here, this is where we would like you to be every day. And we really do worry when we don't see people because we go like, no, I mean, they live here. Why would they not be here? If we haven't seen them, you know, we do need to check in on those people. And then on the back side of those cards, it does say, if I'm with the police, if I'm in hospital, I don't know who to call the common table. This person belongs to the common table, and there will always be someone there who cares about them. So I'm going to ask one final question of the panel after we do a little Q&A. Do we have any questions in person or on the internet? I know we've covered a lot.
One person on the internet asked of Amanda, are 12-step programs successful recovery programs?
Yes, for sure. I personally went the psychoeducational route in my last treatment center, but I was still using other substances. And it wasn't until I came back to the 12-step program that I've been completely sober ever since doing that. And there's something about connecting with the like-minded people, but there's also a very big spiritual aspect of it, connecting to that higher power and connecting into God and connecting to something outside of ourselves. That helps so much in the 12-step program. That is the basis. Clean house, help God, help others, trust God. That's the three things, right? So yeah, I know many people that have just done the 12-step route and they're still sober today.
Thank you. Yeah, same experience, yeah. Any other questions?
Did you want to share anything, Tom?
My encouragement is this. There are people who we see, they're starting to get it together. They've indicated to us, very soon I'm ready to go into some sort of rehab facility. I want to get my life together this year. I'm working towards it. And that's very exciting. When we see people succeed, that's wonderful. There are also people we totally can't anticipate. What the mechanisms of readiness are can be baffling. And we have people who are as ardent users as anyone I've met, and for really good reasons. We have people who are in daily pain for really, tragic reasons that I know and I can identify in myself. Were I to be in their shoes and them in mine, they would be running the common table and I would be sitting at one of these tables. And we think, I understand why this person is on this path. And then we had probably the person who uses the most of our safe supplies come to us a few weeks ago and said, "Don't give me any more needles ever again. I'm done." Well, where did that come from? Of all the people I was counting on needing needles for this year, you were number one. No, I don't want any more needles. And then very quickly it was no needles, doctor's appointments, moving into housing, what kind of furniture do you need for your new place? The transformation was very fast and frankly shocking to me. And I'm going to try and be less shocked when people say, I'm ready to do something else. I'm going to believe for those people, for the people in my family who are ready to move away from addiction. For every tragic circumstance we see here, the reason why we love doing this is for how many people are able to turn a corner and find health and wellness and community. Yeah. Here is my final question for each of you, and I'd like each of you to give an answer to this. What is one thing that each of us can do to be a part of a solution around addiction and recovery and homelessness? Or any one of those, doesn't have to be all three.
Am I going first? Oh, okay. I guess the one word you were saying before was compassion, right? Like just being compassionate towards others and remembering we all have a different story. Like getting sober was the scariest thing I ever did. And as scary as it is to not be sober, the idea, you're not just asking them to put the drug or the drink down, you're asking them to change their whole life. So all those friends that they know, that life that they know, it's telling them they need to do something completely different now. And that's scary, like very scary. So it's not a linear process, sobriety. So just being, like you said, supportive, understanding, being here, getting education, like things like that. And just remembering that we're all God's children, right? We all have our own story. We all have our own experience in life. My story is not better than your story, than Jim's story. We're all just experiencing life differently. That's all.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say just be kind. Just like Nithyen was saying, just humanize a person. Like I think that's I really did not feel like a human when I was out there. So just be kind. Give someone the time of day. Just smile and say hi. I think that's all they want sometimes. Just, how are you? It really is that simple, right? We don't have to give them money out of our pockets all the time. Just recognize them. Make the eye contact. That's all.
I think that's critical. I mean, are we the sort of people that somebody who's struggling could say, I'm going to break through shame and guilt to say, I'm having some challenges here, I need some help. Are we the sort of people who could be approached in that way, even by the members of our own family? Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, a last minute question has come up.
Sure.
Before that, this is only the second of two questions that's come in online, but the comments are very flattering about all of you, particularly the stories that you, Amanda, and Jim have told about your life experience. I've had a couple people have said everybody in a Redeemer has to listen to this. And what a great ad and exposure it has been for all of us about the common table. And on that basis alone is very, very educational. But here's the question. I worked in a community center where the management refused to answer anything about addictions because of liability. I am impressed how hands-on you are with your guests. Where do you draw the line?
Well, Jim mentioned that sometimes he can bend the rules. The magic of this is I'm trying to unbend the rules as someone who, has to think about liability and relying on a very talented group of staff and volunteers and community teams to be those who are really putting themselves forward as what is the way that we can find a solution. I think your first point is, there are people up here who help and who talk about it, and then there are people who know about it, and those are different things. And I think there's a really deep level of discernment in our teams about what is actually helpful for people and what is not. And so I think we go as far as we're able to within the realm of what is helpful. And we do have quite a lot of discretion at the common table to say, for example, this will come back to bite me. We don't give out cash. That's only mostly true. Sometimes that's what somebody needs for something hypercritical. We will call cabs. We will rent cars. We'll jump on the subway with people. We will stay open later than we're supposed to. For some people, it feels like life and death, from time to time. And so, we treat it in that way. I will tell you, none of us are here for the money. And so there's some aspect of just the love of the good that we can accomplish, and that allows us to really express ourselves in ways that go beyond the strictness of the job expression. I do appreciate that not everyone has that luxury, but we often do, and we take advantage of that.
In regards to that question about where do we draw the line, where do we draw the lines with drug use or talking about drugs with people? Was that the question?
It was more along the lines that an agency that this person was working for was concerned that as a staff member, if
Right.
they assume any responsibility in terms of dealing with addiction or identifying, that it poses a liability issue. It's like an insurance question. So,
Oh, yeah, I can't really answer that. There's,
and as an insurance person myself, it's a very hard question. And
Yes.
I love the way Tom answered it.
Okay.
You kind of have to be clever.
well, I don't really know anything about policies or liability, anything like that. I know that my tolerance with that whole subject, it kind of stops when people are using right in front of us, in the common table. There's been times I don't like to tolerate that. There's been times where I've slapped syringes out of people's arms because just not in my space, not in our space, not in our space, right? There is a limit to my.
Well, those are our limits. Our limits are community safety,
Yes.
right? And so we're not a safe injection site, although we don't have prejudice for people who are high or inebriated in our space, because that's how lots of people are forced to live their life to find any relief. I would say that community safety is certainly one part of it, and our community has learned to reinforce that with one another. This space is safe because it's low judgment, but because there are barriers, and those barriers are the reasons why people can come here with the expectation of not having violence and theft, these other issues. So you will see people at the table saying to one another, oh, no, we don't do that here. That is one part of it. I would also say not all organizations do all of the things. So I would lean into partnerships, okay? So we have pamphlets at the back right now for things that we can't do. We don't have any ability to sleep here overnight. So it's very important for us to know the places where you can. The afternoon meals, there are all sorts of services. Jim and I are forging relationships right now with CAMH and Heart Hub, Margaret's House, Sistering, Mimos. There's literally dozens of places that we need to have on our Rolodex because we might say of our organization, we can't do that here. So put out a pamphlet for an expert who can do that. There are resources available in the city for sure. Yeah. Was there another question
Can
here?
I add something?
Oh, yes.
I know I'm not here in talking about organizational management, but I think one thing when people talk about risk and liability is there's a perceived risk for some kind of issue, especially when it comes to addiction. Because when you say addiction, what does that mean? Like, it can mean many things to different people. And you can see, oh, it's a risk, there's a liability there. Sometimes it's a perceived risk, I know. And it's good to always challenge that. And it kind of leads to another part about changes making the world a little bit better. Even when you're working in like an organization, you need to have a little bit of bravery, whether you're just someone working in the front lines, whether you're just auxiliary staff. Being brave means like having these conversations with leaders, with other people, and pushing the needle. It's really not easy. We work with an incredible care organization. I've worked with other incredible healthcare organizations, and even for them, pushing the needle is very difficult. But you just have to sometimes roll up your sleeves and work with it. For myself, as a nurse, I have this professional class, I mentioned that before, but when it comes to treating those with addictions and mental health with dignity, it wasn't the nurses or doctors or social workers that really helped folks. It was people who were diagnosed with mental illnesses that banded together, they worked together, they started doing education. Moving the needle to make people understand how risk works is not easy, but you just have to have a kind of a sense of bravery. A bravery that we don't really talk about much, because people think me and Johnny are brave because we go on the streets and help things out.
They
but
are.
I could say, okay, thank you. But then, some of the CEOs and some of the CHCs, they push back from the government a little bit. Their funding is in jeopardy, but they say, no, we want to be able to support people living on the streets using for injection sites in an alternative way. That's a kind of bravery that you don't hear about. It's not really sexy. It's very much admin, relationship buildings. I think that's something, I hope that helps with this answer, is like, someone says liability, it's okay to push back. Sometimes people say these things because they don't want to have these difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And Tom will help you with that directly.
Well, no, it is true. We are working with a really big mental health organization right now. And we went in and we said, well, how, do your services function? And they said, like this. And I said, is that good? No, not really. It's not ideal. Is there a way to change it? Not quickly. And so they suggested another community organization that is easier to turn, because sometimes the bureaucracy, people understand it doesn't make sense, and there are governmental interference and things. And to just ask that question, I understand it works this way. Should it? Is it supposed to work this way? And where it's not, let's make an adjustment where it falls to us. I think wisdom is part of it, because I will certainly say, there is not a very top-down approach at the common table, because the staff has too much collective wisdom for any one of us to say, I will decide what's best. Every day I think to myself, I wonder what's the best course for this person. And I don't take that to myself. All four of us consult on the care for almost every tricky case when we're not sure. We bring it into the little back room and have that conversation. How do we want to pursue care for this person? Because the answers aren't always evident. And so it really does take a level of expertise, and often expertise in a really long career or personal experience to find these answers. And sometimes, we're still wrong. So I think putting that best foot forward, but also, relying on those who are, in deep expertise is the other piece of it.
I'm listening to what's been going on, and one of the words that is sticking in my mind is humility. And I think, so I'm saying this in commendation, that I think it takes a really deep sense of humility to be able to look and put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, that could be me. I also hearing that what you said, Tom, as well, about I don't have all the answers, so I need all these other people to make sure we have an answer of some sort. But it also makes me think about community. And Amanda, when you were speaking and talked about 12-step programs working, you didn't speak to the part about the community aspect of that, and I wondered if maybe you could, because when I think about 12-step programs, I think about a bunch of people sitting in the room together and having sponsors and that sort of thing, and I think so that might be a key thing to speak about a little bit. If you could?
Yes, for sure. Even like Jim was saying, how the clients here are more susceptible to talk to him because he has that life experience that they have. It's the same in the rooms of 12 steps. The first meeting I ever walked into, it was a women's meeting, I remember, in Calgary, and it was for the first time in my life that I heard all these women telling my story. Like, they were telling these feelings that I thought nobody understood, and they were saying these things that I thought, like, we all think we're terminally unique when we're stuck in our addiction. Nobody gets us. Nobody understands us. If you had the problems I had, you drink too. Like, all these things are individual to me, but they're not. And we realize that we're not alone. Like, that's as soon as you walk into a room of a 12-step meeting, it's like you are not alone. When you walk in and then you connect with all these people and they're laughing about these like traumatic like things that you're like, oh my God, my family hates me for this. And they're like, oh my God, I've done that too. And you can like, maybe not laugh right away about it, but eventually you're like, okay, like you can be yourself. We spend so much time putting these masks on for people our whole life. And there you can finally like get rid of that guilt and shame that we walk around with so much shame, and you can finally connect with other people that have done it too, and they're willing to help you and guide you through the 12 steps, and they're not getting paid for it. They're just there because they genuinely want to help you. Like, I genuinely today, like, now I get paid for it, not very well, but I would love to just one person not be stuck in that darkness that I stayed in for so long. If I can just pull one other person's hand out and help them, like somebody helped me, it's game changer, like just life changing, because it's so hard to come out of it when you're stuck in the cycle of addiction. So that's what the 12-step community is, though. Like I said, there's so many people, even including my sponsor. She got sober through the rooms. She never went to treatment. She's like jealous of me because I got to go to treatment. But she got sober through the rooms like so many other people that I know.
Yeah, that's really great. Any other questions from the room? Nithyen or Johnny? One helpful solution to be part of a solution?
I mean, this is a very hard question. I think I would say for my own journey, it would, like, this may sound like super trivial. It's a very trivial story. In my younger days, I was just, walking along Yonge Street, and someone experiencing homelessness asked me for some money to buy some food and drink. And so, I didn't feel comfortable at that time, like just sort of dishing out some cash. So I went and bought for them at a store. And then, she got her food and her drink, and she just peaced out. And I was like, what? Where's the thank you? I did my good deed for the day, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit like, what just happened here? She just fleeced me, and I get no thanks, and it's just kind of thinking back to that and sort of my response, and the line of work that we engage in day in, day out. I think we just need, in the same way that we have received grace, we need to extend that same grace in many ways. I think, I'm not speaking on behalf of my organization, but for myself, we all fall short, right? And I think just being able to find ways to usher in the kingdom of God, to show that same grace that He has extended to us, I think is very meaningful. And I think if you are authentic, like that themes come up, and you are regular and people recognize you, like if you want to be involved directly, there are tons of ways to volunteer with many different great organizations, and like you're a testament to, to doing that here, right? And so like, you know, it could be, and I remember also, like I think of this gentleman, so I trained in medical school in Detroit, and then there was someone that we were serving there. He struggled with substance use, but he got clean, quote unquote, and then he's housed now. So one of his talks he gave, he was like, when he was just chilling on the street and people would pass by, he felt as if people would just look right through him, as if he was not even human. And so just, I mean, like living on the street is very dehumanizing. And like, you know, I don't think you need to go up to everyone and like say hi or anything like that. But like if there is eye contact, there's eye contact, right? Like just very small things. Or just even a quick hello, I think has been mentioned before, right? Like something that recognizes them as God's creation, as someone of value, is incredibly important. And then, like I guess practically speaking, yes, volunteering at places like this. If that's not your jam, like maybe, dare I say, you know, finding some charities that are meaningful to you, finding out about them and, you know, how they work, and like if you were to donate, would it be put to good use? I think the Common Table is a great place to put it to use. He did not ask me to say that.
That is true.
Or dare I say our Scout program, but I will not say that. Yeah.
Also, we're publicly funded, so.
We are publicly funded. But yes, three guys just serving all of Toronto.
3 guys is not enough, although you do a great job. I do have a rule, as people ask me for something on the street, the bare minimum is to acknowledge that they've spoken to me. Even if I just say nope or sorry or even just shake the head, like that eye contact is the bare minimum of a humanizing effort that I can extend to that person. I think that's great. Authenticity, regularity. Nithyen?
Yeah, no, I suspect everyone here are very kind individuals, so I think being kind, compassionate, I don't need to say that, because I think you do it already. For us, I feel like we're part of a movement to make life a little bit better for those that are vulnerable. So I think having conversations with people is really important, especially community members. It's also good to have conversations with people that you may not feel the same values, because I think it's good to kind of spread it around, because I think I can't change everyone's mind. Jim, he's very close to changing everyone's mind, but even he can't. But if there's anyone that you can change the mind on our behalf or our client's behalf are really important. Conversations to have, and keep on doing that. It's really helpful. I guess the last part is if you know anyone who's been street homeless or uses drugs, it's okay to uplift them and center what they think about these conversations. I really appreciate that for me. It's when I see my patients becoming kind of on social media talking about what they are doing for the community, and I don't take that as a moment to be like, oh, I'm glad I helped this person. It's actually me just to step back. So I really enjoy that I can uplift other folks with lived experience to lead other conversations and to make things better for their communities. Yeah.
Thank you. I think my final word would be, there is often a call, at the very least, to be kind and compassionate, to understand that people are coming from a different place than us and listen. I think the most important lesson that I've learned around addiction is love in boundaries. I think especially if you have a family member, those boundaries can actually be really life-saving for people. And a lack of boundaries can be really devastating to people. And I think having professionals walk you through what it looks like to actually be helpful in somebody's recovery path is very important. And finally, I did promise to give a plug. I was at CAMH, and I said, what's part of the solution? And he said, there's so much stigma around mental health that the number of people that will go and volunteer at a hospital is so high, the people who give to hospitals so high, compared to a place like CAMH, We have so many places you can volunteer, you know, and so whether it's Common Table, whether it's large organizations like CAMH, there are many, 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 many others. You know, to go back and get involved is to work towards destigmatizing a lot of people who are underfunded and under-resourced in terms of volunteers. So I would encourage you to do that. If you're here, if you're online, if you would like more information, thecommontable.info. Sometimes I forget the www. You can put that in or not. And that's a way to contact us, that's a way to donate, that's a way to reach out to volunteer. If you'd just like more information or help with somebody in your life or help with your own sobriety, we would be happy to have you reach out to us. Thank you everybody for being here tonight, appreciate it.